Hi, welcome to This Is Your Spotlight TV show. As you can see, my shameless t shirt right here says, This is your Spotlight TV show. And I am your host, Eurydice Roman. And today I am here with someone who I'm sure if you took your time, you might know who she is. And if you have not taken the time till today, because I presented her to you, here we have Miss Melanie Kizine. She's all the way from where?
Kansas City, Missouri, home of the
Kansas.
Chiefs.
There you go. She's
Yeah.
home. She's there in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm sorry to say the following, but I'm gonna say it like this: Kansas City, Missouri,
Uh-huh.
the
Okay.
Missouri
Okay.
Chiefs, and I'm like, what?
Kansas City Chiefs. Yes. Super
Yes,
Bowl champions. Yes.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's enlighten everybody who might be, unaware of the incredible work you do. So, right now, the work that you're doing, what past work have you done that's shaping your work now?
The past work I've done has been first. Let me start by I have a child with a diagnosis. He's has brachial plexus injury, and I'll explain what that is. Instead of giving me a C-section at birth, they didn't, and they panicked, and he got stuck in the birth canal. He was out from the neck up, and they snatched him out by his left arm, which tore his T4 and T5 nerve from the spinal cord, which of course is inoperable. And so he can't raise and lower and open and close his left hand or arm. And
Oh,
so the past work has been, you know, that since it was a birth injury, getting him, you know, services and therapy until he went to school, went to preschool, went to, elementary school and high school. My past work from that was just being his advocate. That was a full time job. I had a full time job, and then I had that full time job. So I had two full time jobs, and so my past work had been centered around him,
mhm.
obtaining services for him. Going to physical and occupational therapy weekly. Having surgery on his arm, and so that started my journey on wanting to help other parents, of course, as parents of children with brachial plexus, but other parents as well, because when your child is diagnosed has a diagnosis, you're just kind of, we were just kind of not sure what to do. You don't know where to go. You just kind of you research and you do as much as you can, and so with that, it has brought me to where I am today. Fast forward to be an advocate for families with children with diagnosis. And of course, that has changed or added into being an advocate for people with disabilities, period. Not just children, but children is, that's the seat I sat in, but
Mhm.
that as well as advocating for people that have different abilities. A lot of times
Right.
you hear me say disabilities because I do not personally like the word and I won't
No,
use
of
it.
course.
And so the term that I like to use is different ability. To me, everyone that has a diagnosis has a different ability. It's not that you don't have an ability to do something; it's just you do it differently. And I think the word disability to me
Mhm.
is it's a slight. It's
No, of
an attack.
course.
It's
Yeah.
not. It just makes you think. The word disability. The first three words are DIS. And
Yeah.
in some terminology back in the day, you say, "Oh, you diss me," and so that means you push me off, or you don't pay attention to me, or whatever. And to me, that's what it sounds like when you say disability. You're disrespecting to me,
Well.
disrespecting the
Hmm.
situation that the person is in or the child is in, and
Hmm.
ignoring that
Hmm.
they have a different ability. It's not
Yeah,
more
and
or
to be
less.
honest with you, it's better that you find a positive spin on such a word because historically, that word has had such negative connotations
Right. Absolutely.
for year. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even almost a millennia, if you think about it.
Right.
Um, because if you look up the word disabled, it actually has roots far back as the 1600s.
It's been around a long time,
Exactly.
and
So,
it's
Yeah.
and it's not positive. It's not, and there's
No,
nothing
not,
positive
not
about
at
it.
all. Not at
Right.
all.
At all. So I try to use that term very, not at all. I try not to use it. And so I explain to people why I don't. And I had spoken to um, one of my son's former occupational therapists, and she said the term that they're using, they're trying to get away from the term disability or disabled, and they use differently able. And I'm for that. That sounds fine to me because like
Yeah.
I said, it's not that you don't have an ability, you just have a different ability.
Hmm.
It's different. It's not more or less, it's just different. So
Oh, absolutely.
trying to find a term to wrap
Hmm.
around that encompasses every diagnosis, and I use the word diagnosis frequently because it's a diagnosis, and that keeps that helps keep people from saying dis. If you just the words you speak, diagnosis,
No,
everybody.
absolutely. No,
Mm,
sincerely.
yeah.
And yeah, it's not easy to be an advocate because there's a lot of states that do support and encourage, and there's some states that don't follow suit,
Right.
and you have to practically fight them tooth and nail.
Yes, and that's the sad part.
And it's just like, these services that I'm fighting for are essential. Why can't
Yeah.
you see that? I can see that as clear as day.
Yeah.
But why can't you see that? And it's really disheartening. And it's an ongoing battle because sometimes, people with a diagnosis, the needs change. Just like a growing child, every 3 months is something new.
Right.
Sometimes as we age, it's every 6 months
Right.
or even yearly.
Right.
That's why, we have checkups, and that's why we have, doctors to see and stuff like that, because, after a while the body does break down.
Right. Absolutely. That's so true.
And it's not easy to try to like elevate and keep things like that. And I'm sure advocating in Missouri is no easy task.
It
'Cause-
was not. It's not. My son's an adult now, but just going trying to get him services when he was in starting school was a nightmare. In one district, it was a nightmare, and then when I moved to a different district, it was a piece of cake. It's like, really? I mean, you guys are drawing out of the same federal funding. What's the problem? But
I'm sure it felt like you were in the twilight zone. It's like, am I in the right space?
right, it's hard to believe that
Hmm.
with all the other issues that you have, you
Hmm.
know, that has to be one of them. Going to school, having them go through this to go just to go to school, you have to fight for him to get, a 504 and IP, all that. Really, and they have the funding for it. They have it, and I don't know what the reason why it's so hard, but it was. And then eventually, once we moved to another school district, no problem. They welcomed me with open arms. It was like, hey, okay, because I go in, and I think just being an advocate for your own child, I went
Hmm.
in with my plan of, not so much, I don't want to say plan of attack, but my list of things to do, my requests, and I didn't have
Hmm.
to at the new school. I didn't have. They were ready because they had to, of course, obtain his records from the other school district, and they kind of, they were
Hmm.
made aware of who I was. She's serious. She means business, and they had no problem. I had in his middle school and high school years, no problem. But first through fifth grade, kindergarten through fifth grade, nightmare. And I hate that
Yeah.
because I want other parents to know,
Hmm.
you know, this is,
Hmm.
this isn't normal. I mean, it's normal, but it shouldn't be normal. Let me say that. It
Hmm.
should not be normal. This should not be a normal occurrence that you or I will have to say, oh, your child's going to go to school. Be careful, be aware because they won't do this or they won't do that. But you have to. It should not be normalized, but it is because that's the way it works. And that's the way the system has has shown itself to be.
No, exactly. And honestly, it, you see, I think if parents felt more supported to be advocates for their child, if there was a village, the old saying, it
Mm-hmm.
takes a village to raise a child. I think if we had our villages and our community sensibilities intact, we would encourage more
Right.
people to be outspoken and to
Right.
fight more.
Right.
Because nowadays everybody's so zeroed in into their own thing, and everybody will take on to like social media lives, whether it's whatever it is,
Yeah.
instead of directly having a conversation with the person in the room. I'm like, I live with you. What do you mean you don't want to talk to me?
Right.
It's like, don't
Right.
you need me as much as I need you?
Right.
Hello.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
So this is so going through all that has brought me to where I am today. I'm an advocate for special needs children and children with diagnosis and their families.
Good.
I am a volunteer for Children's Hospital here locally. This is where my son had the hospital where my son had
Mm.
his occupational and physical therapy.
Mm.
They were fantastic. They did, very well by us. We were approached his senior year in high school. His occupational therapist
Okay.
approached me. They were doing a TV campaign, and they asked if we would be interested. And so we did. He had 5 billboards around town. We did a 30-second TV spot, and it was wonderful. It was good to get that kind of recognition because we were saying thank you back. That was our thank you back to the hospital for
Mm-hmm.
the things and the services that they had provided for us all
Mm-hmm.
those years. And my platform, I'm motivational transformation, say that fast 5 times, transformational speaker, and my platform is to, I want to be the person that I didn't have when I was going through my journey, when my son was, first born. It was kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I go? What do I do? Who do I call? Am I doing the right thing? And I'm sure we've all had that when that child first gets that diagnosis. We all have a moment or two where we're like, what are we supposed to do with this? Because it's not something that even if you had a possible diagnosis before birth, nothing really prepares you for
Oh no.
what
Not at
happens
all.
after the child is born.
Nope.
It's like all in your face, and you have to. So I want to be the person that I didn't have. Number one, that's my first stance. I want to be to others who I didn't have. Number two, I want to, as I speak to families um, with children with diagnosis, I want to, encourage them, empower them, excite them into learning something new about themselves during this journey. And I coined the term myself for myself, veteran mom, because I've been through that. I've been there, done that, so to speak. And,
Mm-hmm.
I can help somebody coming up behind me that are walking through the same door. Who
Mm-hmm.
do I go to? Where do I turn? Um, and back when I was going through this, social media was not as big as it is now. I mean, the world wasn't as small as it is now. I think Facebook was just getting off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was no TikTok, there was no Instagram, there was no LinkedIn, there was no social
Exactly.
media like that. So
There
back,
was peace on earth and kumbaya. No.
and that was it. And so the fact that you all have this new community, all these new communities and all these new options, it blows my mind because I think back to what if I had all that back then, I would have been further down a yellow brick road faster. But it was supposed to happen. God has a plan for everything. It was supposed to happen that way, and it did. And
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be that person for families that I didn't have, and to encourage them and to empower them. You can make it through this. There is something. This is bigger than you, so you can do this. And because it's your child, you're going to stand firm and you're going to stand tall and you're going to advocate for your child no matter what.
True.
And that's who I'm becoming that person. I am that person anyway. But to other people, I want to encourage them. This is not an easy road. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to have thick skin, and if you don't have it going in, you will develop it. You definitely will. You will develop it. You have no
No,
choice.
no, it's true. In your experience, through everything that you've gone through, um, is it more challenging to get services for someone with a physical diagnosis, or is it harder for the mental diagnosis?
I think in the environment we're in now,
Mm,
it's harder for the mental side of it because
correct.
some children and some children have, as well as adults have, invisible an invisible diagnosis, which could be autism and different other diagnosis they have. So people, it's like you're always having to prove yourself that you have something when people can't see something. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But that has been a big issue. I've been doing research and I read a lot, and parents are saying, I feel like I have to prove that my child is autistic. I have to prove that my child has A, B, and C when it's not if my child's not in a wheelchair, or my son or daughter is not, you know, have braces on their arms or legs, and if that's not the case, then people think you're faking it. And it's like, who would? Okay.
Yes, I'm gonna say that as a child, as a mother with a child on the autism spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
um, the ignorance is amazing, and
Amazing.
and it just speaks to the human condition that if you don't see it, if it's
It
not
doesn't.
in your face and visible, you
It doesn't
don't believe
exist.
it exists.
Mm-mm. And that, I think, to answer that question, hard question, hardcore, easy answer, no. Mental health is far harder than physical.
Yeah.
As again, because you have to almost prove that you're, you know, what you are. And I think that's a disservice to people that have, to the it's a disservice to the families that have a child with an invisible disability, and it's horrible because it's already a journey for the parents, but then you add that on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
That you tell people in more ways than one that what they're saying doesn't matter, and it's not. Oh, it can't be true because I don't see. And so
Mm-hmm.
then you put yourself. People put themselves in a position to where it's you're judging. You can't say what my child is or
Mm-hmm.
isn't. I
Seriously,
know
yeah.
what the diagnosis is. What my son's diagnosis, if you don't pay attention to him and you're not zoned in on him, you wouldn't know that his arm is affected because he's everything else. That's the only issue he has. He doesn't have cognitive, he doesn't have anything. It's just his
Mhm.
physical. And people think just because you have one that you have something else wrong because his left arm. So they think that because he can't use his left arm, that his brain doesn't work. And that's you know far from the truth. But then there are some children that have one disability. I hate the word. I'm sorry. That have one diagnosis, and they think, well, then it's 100%. It can't just be a this part or that part or your arm or your leg. If
Mhm.
it's one, it has to be the whole body, and that's not true. And people suffer behind
Yeah,
that.
hold on.
People are mistreated behind that.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
So I think it is to answer your question. Yes, to me the mental health piece is harder to get services for because
Yeah.
people don't see what you go through. People don't see what other people when they're having a hard time, when they're struggling, when they're at their wits end, or when they can't communicate, whatever. It's harder because people just don't believe it, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Um to be honest with you, every other day it's like it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's not and I do agree the mental is harder to fight for than, the physical.
Yeah,
But again, it depends on the level of the physicality of
absolutely.
the condition.
Absolutely. If you're in a wheelchair, you show up in a wheelchair, and they still and wheelchair bound individuals have a hard time too because
Oh no,
there's
yeah.
not enough
Yeah.
services for them to accommodate. They can't get into buildings. They can't get onto transportation. How does that work?
No,
How does that work?
exactly. Like I have a friend of mine who has cerebral palsy, and he was born with it. And then in contrast to somebody who's a wheelchair user, my friend who was in a car accident and he, you know, has some mild paralysis on his hands, but his mind is agile. It is
Right.
amazing.
And usually that, yeah, that happens. And
And then the same thing with my friend with CP. He even got a master's degree. He worked as a taxi cab driver for about a year and a half to pay for his master's program.
wow.
And he works with people who are differently abled, from physical to mental.
Mhm.
And he's even gone into modeling. How about that one? I was like,
Hey,
you go, boy. Shoot.
that's
He,
right. That's
he
right.
cute. He cute. So that's
Right.
why I'm like,
He,
I said, you go, Carlos, because you cute.
uh-huh.
I see
Uh-huh.
how you work it. It's all good.
Right.
Go
Right.
on,
Right.
baby.
And
Work, work.
those spaces should be open to all, not just this person or that. It should be open to all
Hmm.
because you're
Yeah,
no different than anyone else. You just do things differently. I mean, it's not that
of
hard. You
course.
just do things differently. That's all.
Sure. So let's talk about the current work that you want to do. We talked about your advocacy work. So now you're trying to, I don't know if I can say this, it's up to you. If you want to spill the tea and say what's your next project, it's up to you.
I'm working on. Actually, I have a couple different projects.
Okay.
I'm working on. I am speaking at a few events around town this year,
Okay, good.
and I'm going to be, of course, my advocacy is going to reign supreme,
Of course.
and that's just to go into these spaces and encourage families on how to, live a ceiling free life is what I stand behind.
No,
Because
exactly.
when your child has a diagnosis, people put a box around you and they put a ceiling over you and they don't let you go so far, only so far, and they don't expect that you could only go so far as the ceiling. That's it. The sky's not the limit for you. The ceiling is, and that's not what I stand for.
No, exactly. And
Yeah,
that's what people forget to like think about and things like that.
right.
So dang, you got two? Oh my goodness. And, ah,
Yeah,
it's like
more. There's more on the horizon. I'm going to be working with a company here locally, with you know some board issues, some implementing some processes and procedures, around advocacy for people with diagnosis.
mhm,
Um, and I'm gonna also, I still volunteer. That's what I'm gonna be doing. That's my give back to the local hospital here that gave us so much. I'm gonna continue to do that,
mhm.
and find other places that I can, you know, navigate into to help because the need is there. A lot of people I've been told, they're like, oh, we give to this or that charity every year, blah blah blah, but and that's great. We're not discounting that at all, but there's so many spaces in each and every city, each and every town all over the country that we
Mhm.
could volunteer at, that we can get involved. Just like a lot of people get involved with
Mhm.
Habitat for Humanity. There's so many causes around in everyone's local city or town that they can get involved in
Oh
to
yeah.
help. And so giving back is an excellent way to help others and to be in tune with what's going on in the community. And I plan to continue to do that, as well as just spearhead some projects to bring advocacy, to bring awareness, and above all, acceptance of each and every diagnosis. We're not going to pick and choose. We're going to accept it all
That's
because
right.
it needs to be accepted. Now that we want you to accept it, be aware, and support.
That's right. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you are doing in the great state of Missouri. No, not Missouri. I know. I was so
Missouri.
close to saying Missouri. Missouri.
Right, right. That's okay. That's okay.
Listen, all of us contribute a grain of the sand, and sometimes that sand turns into a mountain, and
Yes,
we will scale it and we will get there. So,
absolutely.
thank you so much for your
You're
time,
welcome.
Melanie.
Thank you for
I
having
appreciate
me.
it. Thank you for being on What This Is Your Spotlight
My
TV
spotlight.
show.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm going to work on a sign eventually.
That's all right. We'll do that together. I'll help you.
No, of course. Okay, so hold on one moment.